Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this lesson. In this lesson, I'm going to teach you about the IELTS Speaking Test Part 1. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about the topic of weather. Now, before we begin the lesson, remember, if you're interested in this topic, I have a playlist on IELTS Speaking Test Part 1. I have a few videos that I have already uploaded on other topics. So feel free to have a look at that playlist. Thank you. Now, let us look at some of the questions that you may be asked by the examiner during your IELTS speaking test on the topic of weather. Question 1. What is the weather like today? What is the weather like today? Now, in that question, you're expected to describe the weather on that particular day when you have your speaking test. So, you could answer that question by saying, look at sample answers 1. A. It is very sunny. It is very wet. It is very rainy. It is very cloudy. It is very misty. It is very windy. It is very chilly. Okay, so all those are words that you could use to describe the weather. If it is sunny, then it means the sun is shining. If it is wet, it means that there is a lot of rain. If it is rainy, it means that it is raining. If it is cloudy, it means that you have a lot of clouds in the sky. If it is misty, then it means you have a lot of fog. You can hardly see. If it is windy, then it means that there's a lot of wind. If it is chilly, then it means it's freezing, it's cold. Okay? So you could answer that question, what is the weather like today, by saying it is very sunny today. It is very wet today. It is very rainy today. It is very cloudy today. It is very misty today. It is very windy today. It is very chilly today. Now, in answers 1B, you can combine those words. For example, you can say, it is very warm and sunny today. It is very warm and sunny today. It is very cloudy and wet today. Okay, so you can combine those words, but ensure that you combine the words effectively. Make sure that it makes sense. For example, if it is sunny, then there's a chance that it's warm. If it is cloudy, then there is a chance that it's rainy and wet. Okay? Now, let's move on to question 2. What is your favorite weather? What is your favorite weather? Now, what this question is asking you is, out of all the different types of weather that we have, which one do you prefer the most? Which one do you prefer the most? Which one do you like the most? What's your favorite weather? Now, you could answer this question by saying, for example, let us look at sample answer 2. My favorite weather has to be when it is sunny and warm, because I can sit outside and enjoy the sun or go to the beach. Okay? Remember what I said in my previous videos on IELTS, on the IELTS speaking test. Do not give a yes or no answer. Also, when you give an answer, explain your answer. Okay? because that will give you a chance to showcase your vocabulary in English, but also it will give the examiner the impression that you have a good command of the English language. Okay? So, my favorite weather has to be when it is sunny and warm. Why? Because I can sit outside and enjoy the sun or go to the beach. Okay? So, don't just leave it at my favorite weather has to be when it is sunny and warm. Most likely the examiner will ask you why, but usually if you're sensible and if you want to do really well, then you should explain your answers. My favorite weather has to be when it is sunny and warm because I can sit outside and enjoy the sun or go to the beach. Now, question 3. Do you like the weather in your country? Do you like the weather in your country? Now, this question is very straightforward. The examiner simply wants to know whether you like the weather that you have in your country. Okay? Now, you could answer this question by saying, for example, when she asks or he asks, do you like the weather in your country? Not really. This is because most days are cold, cloudy, windy, and wet. Now, if you live in England, then there is a great chance that your answer will be not really. This is because most days are cold, cloudy, windy, and wet. You see? So you have not left your answer at yes or no. Do you like the weather in your country? Yes. Do you like the weather in your country? No. Now that's not a good answer. Ensure that you answer in full sentences, but also ensure that your answers are well explained. Do you like the weather in your country? Absolutely. I love the weather in my country. That is because it's always warm and sunny. Okay? Do you like the weather in your country? Absolutely. I love the weather in my country. That is because it is very warm and sunny every day. Okay? So remember also when you're giving your answers, use the correct intonation. Okay? Like for example, not really, not at all, absolutely, sure. Okay? Make sure you use the correct intonation in English. Okay? Now, let's move on to question 4. Is the weather the same in all parts of your country? Is the weather the same in all parts of your country? What this question is asking you is, in different parts of your country, do you have exactly the same type of weather? In the north, in the south, in the eastern part, in the western part, in the central part of your country, do you have exactly the same type of weather throughout the year, for example? Is it sunny everywhere at the same time, for example? Or is it windy? Or is it rainy? Do you have the rain season, for example, in all parts of your country at the same time or not? Okay, now how shall we answer that question? Let's look at sample answer 4. The question is the weather the same in all parts of your country? Not at all. In the coastal part of the country, it is always dry and sunny, but the rest of the country is often rainy and cloudy. Okay, so there I have given a complete description of the different types of weather that we have in my country, but also I have given words, I have used words that describe those types of weather, and also I have distinguished between which parts of the country have what type of weather. Okay? Is the weather the same in all parts of your country? Not at all. In the coastal part of the country, it is always dry and sunny, but the rest of the country is often rainy and cloudy. Okay? Now, let's move on to question 5. Does the weather ever affect how you feel? Does the weather ever affect how you feel? Now, what this question is asking you is, when the weather changes, does that influence your feelings as well? So, do your feelings change depending on the weather? Are your feelings affected by the change in the weather? Okay? Does the weather ever affect how you feel? Now, how shall we answer that question? Let us look at sample answer 5. Does the weather ever affect how you feel? Most definitely. When it is cloudy and wet, I often feel a bit depressed. On sunny days, however, I feel extremely happy and energetic. Okay, so in that answer, you have answered yes by saying most definitely. Okay, and then you have gone right ahead and explained how you feel during different types of weather. When it is cloudy and wet, you feel depressed. But when it is sunny, you feel happy and energetic. So all those words, depressed, happy, and energetic, are words that we use to describe our feelings. And if you're not familiar with words which help us to describe our feelings, I actually have a video that I have uploaded on vocabulary that we use to describe our feelings or our emotions. Okay? So feel free to have a look at that video, and you can also find a complete playlist on vocabulary. Words that we use to describe people, words that we use to describe work, words that we use to describe children, and those kind of videos will also help your vocabulary. Okay, that will help you to grow your vocabulary and to develop a better mastery of the English language. So, question 5, does the weather ever affect how you feel? Most definitely. Now, remember to use intonation. The correct intonation is very, very important in English, especially when you're speaking. It is, for a speaking test, it is extremely important, okay? So that's why some of the words at the beginning, I have put an exclamation mark, and that means that you should speak them in a certain way, okay? Do you like the weather in your country? Not really. Is the weather the same in all parts of your country? Not at all. Does the weather ever affect how you feel? Most definitely. Okay? Now let's move on to the last question. Does the weather in your country affect transportation? Does the weather in your country affect transportation? Now, what this question is asking you is, when the weather changes in your country, does that have any influence on transportation? Okay? Does that affect transportation in any way? That reminds me, I've actually just uploaded an IELTS speaking test on the topic of transport. So if you want to have a look at that, you're more than welcome. So, does the weather in your country affect transportation? Okay. Now, when we're talking about transportation, we're obviously talking about how people move from one point to another. For example, do people use private cars, trains, buses, flights, bicycles? Okay, so how does transportation in your country, how is it affected by the weather? That is the question. Does the weather in your country affect transportation? And how do you answer that question? Let's look at sample answer 6. Does the weather in your country affect transportation? Sure. When it rains heavily, most of the buses and trains get cancelled. It does also lead to a lot of traffic jams and car accidents on the roads. Does the weather in your country affect transportation? Sure. When it rains heavily, most of the buses and trains get cancelled. It does also lead to a lot of traffic jams and car accidents on the roads. Now, in that answer, I have provided ways in which the weather affects transportation in my country, okay? Now, when it rains heavily, okay, when you have a lot of rain, then what happens is that buses and trains get cancelled because obviously the roads kind of get flooded, okay? So the trains and the buses get cancelled. But that's not all. When it rains really heavily, then there is a lot of traffic jams on the roads and car accidents as well, okay? So the idea here is that you provide a comprehensive, detailed answer. You need to showcase that you have a good command of the English language through a broad choice of vocabulary. Cancelled, traffic jams, accidents, okay? That shows that you have a broad vocabulary to speak about the topic that the examiner is asking you about, okay? Now, this brings me to the last section of this lesson where I'm going to read the questions for you. And as I read the questions, try and answer them. What is the weather like today? What is your favorite weather? Do you like the weather in your country? Is the weather the same in all parts of your country? Does the weather ever affect how you feel? Does the weather in your country ever affect transportation? Okay, now, this brings me to the end of the lesson. If you found the lesson useful, then do subscribe to the channel and share this video with your friends, with your college mates, with anybody that you think needs it, and give this video a thumbs up. Until our next lesson, I shall say bye-bye.